So tonight we'll just go through, first of all, where to find the fish, and then look at some ground and areas. We'll talk about bait and burley, maybe some setups there, how to hook a snapper. I think in the ocean it's very easy, but in Port Bay it can be fairly difficult. We'll look at seasons, we'll look at some ramps in Port Bay possibly, to give you guys a rundown if you've never been there before. I've got their questions, but you can basically ask questions anytime during the night, so if you'd like just to slow me down. So probably the most important aspect of any fishing is finding the fish. The most important bit of equipment you've got on your boat other than your motor is your depth sounder. So what you need to do is you need to really learn how to operate your sounder and also what fish look like on your sounder. Because many sounders can give you false reading. You think you may be on fish, it may be weed, it may be rock, you don't know. So if you're all like Lucas Wilson, you can put your pick down and go for a dive and actually have a look and see what's underneath your boat. But basically you've really got to read the instructions and know what fish look like. Myself, I've always used either low ends, but lately it's always been Furuno gear. So in my last couple of rigs I've had the 620, which is probably a unit that some of you guys may have. I always use the system or the rigging bottom lock. So I'll lock onto the last 10 metres, okay, so that's where the snapper will be, or that's where they'll be feeding anyway. I use as much zoom and as much sensitivity as I can. So I ramp the sensitivity right up in the unit until it clutters, and then I drop the sensitivity down. Once the clutter goes, that's where you actually want to be. And when you're actually sounding for fish, you just want to be in gear. So if you're actually going against the wind, you need to go with the wind, just in gear. So as slow as you can go while still moving. Very, very important. The longer the target, or the bigger the shape, the better the fish. Some systems will bring up boomerangs, some systems will bring up big blobs. It really depends on the unit. Obviously the more blobs or the more boomerangs in any one area, the more likelihood that you'll get a good fish. Now, you can sound fish in 40 metres of water, you can sound fish in 80 metres of water. You'll sound fish as long as you've got the patience to. Basically, that's what it counts to. So, what you want to do is you want to find the fish before you drop your anchor. That really is the basis of fishing Port Phillip Bay. That's sounding the fish before you drop your anchor. Now you can go to a mark. I've got a couple of marks on those handouts there that produce fish. But what I'd do is I'd start sounding a kilometre before the mark, and if I don't find fish, I'll keep going over the top of the mark, and I'll keep going. I might even go 2 or 3 k's, but I won't stop unless I find fish on the sounder. It's very, very important, specifically for Port Phillip Bay, but also when you're fishing shallow water here in the open ocean, in the Southern Ocean. Because fishing shallow water in the Southern Ocean will fish exactly the same as Port Phillip Bay fishes. Okay? Normally you'll fish the deeper water when the sun's high, and you'll fish the shallow water when the sun is low. First light and last light, in shallow water you will get big fish in the ocean. Make no mistakes about it. I say don't be afraid to fish on your own, because normally when you look out of Warrnambool with the snapper on, you see blokes fishing on the 40 metre line, 10 or 20 boats all bunched up together. My suggestion would be just to get away from it, just to go and find your own territory. And I'll talk about some territory that you can actually go and look for fish, and you'll find fish there. So just make your own way. You'll be better off for it.
Take a set of binoculars.
Always take a set of binoculars.
Why? So you can see the shore.
So you can see what your mates
fish
are.
under the water. I see what your mates are.
So you can see what your mates are. Look, even when you're tuna fishing, you should always have a set of binoculars in the boat. Unless you've got a sat-nav system where you can actually pick up boats that are miles away from you. A set of binoculars always works. I always carry one if I can. Whenever I've had a boat, always had a set of binoculars.
you'll be offshore chasing tuna and you hear blokes catching fish and you know they're not far away from you. Those binoculars, they really help. So I always take a set. Okay, so around here, the majority of us fish in 40 metres of water, yeah? 40 metres plus, okay? In Port Phillip Bay, you know, deep water for Port Phillip Bay is anything above 12 metres of water. As I said before, you'll find fish in deep water most of the day and you'll find fish in shallow water first and last light. The one thing that we do have a lot here in Warrnambool and obviously along the south coast is limestone. Limestone is a very important reef for snapper. I can't tell you why, I don't know. I've just found that when I've been fishing on limestone, I've had really good catches of fish, and it's pretty much stretched from Cape Bridgewater all the way to Peterborough. Whenever you fish limestone, you tend to get a lot of snapper. Now, I don't know whether it's because you get a lot of sea urchin on limestone, that's what I'm thinking. The snapper are there grazing on the sea urchin, but you just tend to really get good runs of snapper on limestone. I always seem to think if you're getting a few leather jackets, especially those big blue China leather jackets, those big kilo jobs, you're on the right ground. They seem to favour the same territory as the snapper does. If you're getting gurned, either you've got a lot of burley in the water, which is a good thing, or you're fishing over sand and mud. It's probably not where you really want to be. So you're best off to pull up the pig and have a look around. Okay. Just looking at where they target snapper offshore, or where I think they are. Snapper are definitely an all-round proposition in the southwest. There's make no mistake about that. A few areas I really like to fish. Port Fairy off the water tower, in between 30 and 40 metres of water. We've pulled a lot of big snapper off that patch. You do need to sand a little bit, so move around in that area, but you do tend to get some good snapper off there. I've had good sessions with Lucas. Off there we've got several snapper, big fish over 3 and 4 kilos. Also Peeping Tom off Jambuck. I don't know how many of you guys know where Peeping Tom is? Rightio, you should all know where Peeping Tom is. It's probably the most prolific fish area in the district, especially for snapper, for kingfish and for thresher sharks. We've also got makos there, haddock, virtually everything. Now the reef is directly off Jambuck. It's a series of bommies, probably 5 or 6 bommies over a 10k or so run. But we get really good snapper there, generally starting from now. The first time I actually said that I'd go there and catch snapper, blokes, well, they pretty much laughed at me. But by the time we had the 6 fish in the boat, they would come in anchoring as close as they could. And they were genuinely good fish, between 4.5 and 6.5 kilo. We get them there pretty much all summer. The bigger fish are only sort of now, between now and Christmas really. We sort of get to the first bommy there. It's pretty scary if you go up to it in a rolling sea, because it does break. But if you stay in around 18 to 20 metres of water, you'll pick up fish there. And using the same techniques as you'd use in Port Phillip Bay. We'll talk about that later. Warrnambool, obviously, along the 30 and 40 metre line. Peterborough, south of the Antares.
How deep off the Antares?
Again, it depends. I like sort of 35 metres of water off the Antares, but if you go a bit deeper, sort of 40, 45, you know. But the Antares is a very rubbly area, so you have to, again, sound a little bit before you find your fish. But I really like fishing the Antares. Off Point Hess, we've got a couple of really good marks there. Pulled a lot of snapper off there, a lot of big fish off there. When the fish are really running, you get your bag on it, you get them very, very easy. The best fish we've got up there are around 7 kilos, but generally they're sort of around 4 to 5 kilos, so they're really good fish, very, very decent fish off there. Julia Reef off Narrawong, and also North Shore in Portland. Now I'll sort of spend a little bit of time talking about North Shore, because I know that when we fish spring, especially if we get a hell of a lot of is the wind that lifts the water temperature, and that's the wind we need. That kicks up the snapper, kicks up the kings, and also kicks up your thrushes and your makos, and also helps with your tuna. So the more south-east easterlies we get, the better our season's going to be. So when you're at home and you've got a southeaster and you really want to go fishing, obviously you can't fish offshore here, too lumpy, tow to Portland and fish North Shore. It can be brilliant. I've got the best snapper of my life off Portland, off North Shore in 4 metres of water, and it went just over 20 pounds. And we've got some rippers there. Fishing in close, you know, between 4, 8, 6, 10 metres of water, you'll get some really good fish there. Again, sound, find the rubble, keep off the really nasty reef patches, but it can be brilliant. First light and last light, Portland's a really good option for you. April through September, we fished Cape Nelson and Cape Bridgewater between 50 and 100 metres of water. Directly south of Julia Percy in 80 metres. It's really good, and deep off Warrnambool between 80 and 100 metres. Virtually that's virtually one reef that runs that whole entire distance from Cape Bridgewater all the way out the front of Warrnambool. If you have a look at your GPS, you'll actually see it. Virtually along the 80 metre line, you'll see it, and there's a huge limestone drop, which obviously must have been the coast at some stage. But it's got a really nice drop off, it drops off really quickly, and you pick up a lot of fish there, and also during tuna season it's a very good time to fish for tuna, and more specifically some big fish there. So I'll just talk about some areas just to consider. New fish arriving around spring, early summer. I reckon there's some really good areas to prospect around Warrnambool, but I'll be looking at anything less than 20 metres of water. Levy's Point and west towards, and including the area around Helen Rock, which is directly beneath Tower Hill, would be exceptional. And also, as I said, North Shore in Portland can be prolific during summer, and as I said, particularly in southeasters. I suppose when you're in a boat, you want to be comfortable. Going out of Portland in the southeaster, you're actually travelling across the wave, you're not travelling into the wave. So you can really go flat out all the way there, even at a 15 to 20 knot southeaster, because you're travelling across it. Also, I suppose Port Fairy in the bay itself, during heavy weather, will produce big fish as well. I'll just digress for a little while, and I'll just talk about some maps that I've got that I have here. Right, these are screen dumps taken off Willow's iPad. This is the area I'm talking about between Warrnambool and Helen Rock. And it's really this area here, these areas here that I'm really interested in. Those areas of those rises we get, especially after the deep water, will definitely hold snapper at this time of year. Especially these areas there where it goes from deep to shallow to deep, will be absolutely perfect. Now that's on everyone's Novonix chart. So if you've got a Novonix chart on your GPS, you'll have this. Okay, so it's very, very easy to find. I suppose other things to consider about this area is that whole area there in good conditions over summer will produce kingfish, make no mistake about it, and also thresher sharks at the same time. So you could conceivably anchor and fish all three species at the one time. But especially the area around Helen Rock itself, it does break there, so you need to be careful. But they're the real areas you want to fish for snapper, in my opinion, especially up in Warrnambool, because they will produce fish. Just moving on. There's Julia Reef. I know it produces fish because I've caught fish there. As you can see, it's very similar to the area just off the coast here, where you've got deep water and shallow rises. The reef itself is quite extensive, so you're best fishing just off the reef, not on it, because it's fairly foul there. Again, you'll get very big snapper there, you'll get thresher sharks, and you'll also get kingfish there. So, a really good area to prospect. And it's an area that you can fish in a 20 to 25 knot southeast without a problem.
North Shore itself, between Portland and Narrawong. Again, it sort of gives you the same sort of area that you want to look at. Julie Reef is just here, just off the page there. But we fish pretty much uptight in around between 4 and 6 to 8 metres of water for the fish. Again, looking for that gravelly bottom. Again, you'll catch those 3 species of fish in the same spot. And you also have a very good chance of getting a lot of mulloway there at times as well. So just other things to consider. I'll just move away from the southwest now and just talk a little bit about Port Phillip Bay itself. I don't know how many of you guys have fished Port Phillip Bay or how much experience you've got with it, but coming from our side of the bay, I'll call it from the western side of the bay, especially out of Werribee, which is just here, it's just around there, about there. You'll be just confronted with a mess of lights if you come out in the middle of the night, which can be a bit confronting, I suppose. So I reckon it's always best to either come off at midday or 10 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning. Snapper fishing in the bay is very tide dependent. You do get fish first light and last light, but generally you get fish on tide changes. Generally the top of the tide and the first 2 hours into the run out is exceptional. You will have difficulties with current, lines going underneath the boat and such. But I just would suggest that you take either a second anchor or you use a second line and just adjust your boat into the current itself. Port Phillip Bay is now a prolific snapper ground. It is unbelievable. The amount of fish that come out of Port Phillip Bay after the removal of the snapper, the scallop treasures is incredible. Generally, the run of fish is a little bit smaller than what we see here. An average fish might be 2.5 kilos, but you get some stonkers there, sort of 6 and 7 and 8 kilo fish. I've given you some marks there to have a look at. I reckon personally the best and most consistent area will be south of the Falkner Beacon, which is just there, and south. And south of the beacon and around the beacon obviously is an area very busy for shipping. It's very well marked by a large number of fairway buoys or fairway markers, which are yellow. But I really like to fish the St Kilda side of the fairway buoys. And again, once you come up to Falkner Beacon, I'd start sounding, a couple of the buoys north of the beacon, and keep sounding until you find fish. Now, if you've got any sort of a sounder, you will pick up fish in Port Phillip Bay, and they're absolutely unmistakable. The marks that you'll get, you'll know that they're fish because it looks completely different to having no fish underneath the boat. We fished off Carrum a couple of weeks ago, and the amount of fish we saw in the centre was incredible, and the amount of bait also was incredible. So as soon as the water temperature gets up in Port Phillip Bay, the place will go nuts. It's only really a short tow if you consider that a lot of us think nothing about going to Port Mac tuna fishing for the day. Well, it's virtually the same distance. 2 hours and 15 minutes, you're aware of your boat round, you put in there and you've got the whole bay in front of you. Again, with Port Phillip Bay, it's a place you can fish in windy conditions. So, you can fish the bay anything up to 20 knots with not too much difficulty, especially with a good boat, with anything over sort of 7 and 18 foot. On our side of the bay, you do have to cover some distance to get to deeper marks, but the distance I'm talking about might be able to be 5 or 6 or 7 k's, which is something we do. It's nothing for us to do 5 or 6 k's. Normally we do it 70. So to fish the bay is something very much within our reach. So then I've got a few marks for you guys to try there in the bay itself. Most of those are very accessible off the western side. So bait and burley, obviously fresh is always the best, and everyone knows that. If you can get it fresh, use it. I mean, we've caught fish on gurnard fillets, we've got fish on cooter, on those pink little perch things you get. They're an excellent, not only a good snapper bait, but a bloody good gummy bait, good schoolie bait.
Even leather jackets, chop them up, use them. They're the ideal bait. Now, the other thing is that when you're baiting up, just take a little bit of time, take a little bit of care. When you're baiting fish up, I like, even off here, I use the same sort of baits that I use at Port Phillip Bay. So I'd go to a silver whiting, I'd go to a pilchard. If I can get my hands on some Tommy Rough or some little salmon, I'd use those. I like to use a Snell 2-hook rig. If you don't know what a Snell 2-hook rig is, I've got some rigging here and I'll show you how to tie them. Virtually it's a 2-hook rig. Both hooks are fixed. I don't like a moving hook. And I don't like a sinker that runs down to a hook. As far as I'm concerned, the sinker is like a slide hammer. When the fish nods away, that sinker will knock the hook out. That's the way I see it. So I like a sinker above a swivel. So the first hook goes into the fish, say about a centimetre away from the gill case, and actually in and out of the gill case. Big snapper always take a fish by the head first. So you need a hook coming out of the gill case, sort of just before the eye if you can arrange it. The second hook is really a keeper hook. It's something to keep the bait nice and longitudinal, so it lays nicely in the water, nice and flat, and that just goes, say, an inch or two, say an inch after the tail, and again towards the head with the point firmly sticking out. As far as I'm concerned, you can't use a hook big enough for a snapper. I like using 4Os or 6Os. Fishing the bay, using whole fish baits, and if I'm using snapper snatchers, I like using 8Os, so the biggest ones you can get, and circles, obviously, because they'll hook themselves pretty much. So yeah, fresh cooter, fresh squid, market horse sand whiting if you get it. There's always sand whiting off the pier. Take your kids down there, grab a bucket, catch a few of those. Fresh salmon if you can get them, also in fillets. Fresh garfish, there's plenty of garfish around here. All you need is a good dip net, a good underwater light. Just go down to Port Fairy, Swing Beach there, go towards the Maud River mouth itself. There's always a heap of gars there. Use your light and net as many gars as you want, bring them home, take them home with you.
Marty, do you prefer circle hooks or straight?
I always try to use circles. Definitely circles. If I'm not using circles, if I haven't got those, I use KLs, which are virtually, they're very similar to a circle. I find using the circle or the KL, not only will you catch a snapper, but you'll school in the side of the mouth, and they tend not to bite you off as much. Yeah. Sort of setups, Port Phillip Bay, anything between 7 and 10 kilo is ample. Offshore, I like to use braid in deeper water. Gives you a lot better feel. Gamakatsu is really good in deeper water also, but stick to those circles. Because really, when you're fishing, you want to multitask. I reckon you do. So you want to give yourself every opportunity to catch a fish. Sinker weights, well, it varies depending on the depth you've got. So if you're fishing anything under 20 metres of water, keep the weight down. You don't need anything over sort of an ounce, maybe 2 ounces, but try to keep it around an ounce if you can. Obviously, deeper water, you need a bigger sinker, especially if you intend on drifting. Alright, Port Phillip Bay, there's a lot of different combinations of ways you can cook fish. A lot of people say use the lightest drag you can, leave the bail arm open, and all this sort of rot. I just think that's a waste of time. You're better off with a locked up drag. Fish will come along, your rod will load up, and the fish will be hooked before you get to it. It's very, very rare that you'll lose a fish when you've got a locked up drag. If you've got a loose drag, you will lose fish. It's very hard, you get very nervous, you get excited, you pick up the rod, you go to click gear, and most times you forget to click your rod in gear, and the thing overruns and it's total mess. Or the fish has got the bait before you got to it. So I like to fish in gear even before the bait.
When you say locked up drag, what are you saying?
Just a fighting drag. So if you set your drag as you normally would set at a third of your breaking strain, that's what I mean by locked up drag. So it's pretty much cast out, put the bar arm over, and just leave it locked up. Rightio, so there's a couple of runs of fish in Port Phillip Bay. Normally it starts now, obviously, and runs till December. And there's normally a bigger run of fish, a big fish that usually goes from February through to April. By that time, people have forgotten about snapper because we're catching kings and we're catching tuna, so the snapper gets forgotten about, which I reckon is probably a good thing for them. But in the bay, that's pretty much what happens. Similarly to the bay, they get a really good run of pinkies around Christmas time, and we do the same here. We get some really good pinkies, sort of January, February, March, when that water temperature comes up. Get some really good, have some really big sessions off North Shore, particularly in the evening. So snapper gets really active in water temperature above 16 degrees. They start to spawn in water temperatures over 18 degrees. Tide changes, as I said, are normally the best. Try to fish a rising barometer if you can. That's one of the things that we don't do here. We tend to fish either a stable or dropping barometers because we fish northerlies and northwesterlies. When you got a northerly or northwesterly, have a look at your barometer. It's usually either stable or dropping. We don't fish rising barometers because that normally happens on the easterly or southeasterly. That's why I say that they're the best times to get out if you can. So to hit North Shore. Moons are really important in Port Phillip Bay. Best bit of advice I can give you, don't go near the joint the day before, the day of, or the day after a full moon. Just forget about the joint. I don't know why, it's like Portland and tuna fishing. It just closes down around a full moon. Don't know why. Any other time, any other stage, really doesn't matter too much. But the day before, the day of, and the day after a full moon, just keep away from it. Right, we've got 3 fairly good ramps on the western side of Port Phillip Bay. Williamstown, which is at the Hotties. You've got Altona, and you've got Werribee. I think that if you could do yourself a favour, try to keep away from Altona as much as you can. The place turns into a madhouse during snapper season. People go mad, and it's just Melbourne at its worst. The Hotties ramp is a real good one. It's just actually being redone as well. It's a multi-lane, multi-berth ramp. It's got really good access to Port Phillip Bay even in heavy conditions, and you actually come out virtually in Hobson's Bay. So you won't really hit a heavy water until you get around the Williamstown breakwater, and by that time you're in good water already. So it doesn't matter whether you go east or west in those conditions, you're in good water. So I really prefer out of those 2 Williamstown. The ramp at Werribee has also been redone. They've got new floating pontoons there. It's a multi-lane ramp. I don't think you'll get the fits of ramp roads there as you do at Altona. It's the closest ramp we've got to us other than Geelong. It's one I'd seriously consider. After that, Geelong itself as a snapper fishery can be very, very good, but it can be terribly frustrating. So I tend to leave it alone. I've caught some good fish there. I tend to leave it alone. Other than that, Port Arlington gives you good access to water, deep water off Werribee, which is another close one to us, and also St Leonard's. Though St Leonard's can be terribly exposed in an easterly.
I was down there the other day and the boat ramp just all sealed it up.
Seals it up with sand. Yeah.
The bar crushed it from there and did it.
Yeah. That happens this time of year.
Yeah.
They get badly silted up. I think Port Arlington ramp, they just cleaned it.
Yeah, it was sharp.
Sharp, yeah. I think they just cleaned it. But when they designed the boat ramp, they completely stuffed it.
Yeah.
They did the same thing to lime burners. They ended up having to put that big, sort of that big sand breakwater in front of it to stop that from happening. But the thing is, the council, they have the same problems we do. They leave Port Arlington until holiday season. This is when they get the most complaints. So that's the only time they actually clean it. The ramp they put onto the caravan park is better than the public ramp. It's just ridiculous. So with St Leonard's, you've got access to incredible water, very, very close to the ramp. But in the southeasterly, it's very badly exposed. So just be careful, because you will, can damage your boat there. So yeah, Clifton Springs is alright, not too bad. But again with Clifton Springs, they have the same problem. It silts up, so they've got to get a dredge in there every now and then. So you don't want to go all the way to a ramp. It takes you 2.5 hours to get there. You'll be bloody confronted with those sorts of things. So obviously Werribee, Altona and Williamstown, you don't have those issues. So that's why I'm sort of pointing towards those places. That's pretty much snapper fishing on the way I see it in a nutshell. I'm sure a lot of you guys have been in and amongst it. Some of you probably a lot more than I have. I love fishing for them. I think that they're very honest fish. I think that they give you all that they've got. I don't think they're a speed demon in the fighting capacity, but I think that they're very honest. They fight quite well. They're not too bad in the pan. I reckon they're a great way to get kids stuck into some serious fish, some big fish. And they're really there for us to all have a go at. So just if you've got any questions,